take on effective altruism.
Yes,
Yeah.
I had a friend who was applying for grants for effective altruism, and he was trying to become a professional furry. It was from a transhumanist perspective. He wanted to be promoting transhumanism through, I guess, VR and furrydom, and so he
This
was
is the
applying for
commies.
a
This is
grant.
what they do after the revolution. They
This is
become a
exactly.
professional furry.
So he was trying to get a grant from the FTX, Effective Altruism Grants Agency. And he was telling me that these are the people who are funding the moonshots. If you can't get approved money from the regular effective altruists, this group, they might give you money. And now you see, well, that's a reason why. It's like from the top of the organization, they're just betting on whatever the fuck, not best ideas. And so it trickles down into the entire industry. But I think effective altruism they're almost always starting off with assumptions that are just incorrect. And because of that, you multiply it in a way that leads to really bad outcomes. And say one example is this idea that we got to think about the trillions of humans in the future that might exist at some point. And so we have to make sure that humanity gets to that point, that we have trillions of humans in space. And that just sounds like a cancer to me. Maybe it's better off if there's only a few billion or million humans in space. Why do you think that we need trillions of humans in space? What if it upsets the entire balance of the universe that you and your simple utilitarian model is clearly not accounting for? And the other side of it is just like maximizing like pleasure to some degree. And so there's like this other like outcome of just in VR doing heroin for the rest of eternity. And that's like the ideal outcome. Clearly, neither of these are like good, but like whenever you start using math to subjective or human things, you're almost always going to end up in a situation where you are clouding what feels right and potentially motivates you to do things that anyone else would say that feels wrong. And so that I don't trust them at all. I interact to some degree with the effective altruism crowd.
I have people I respect quite a bit that are in the EA community and are big promoters of it, and I think it's wacky. But to put what you just said in another way, anytime you optimize a system along a single variable, you fragilize it somewhere else necessarily, and you likely don't know where you're doing the fragilization. And it's an incredibly heuristic sort of point of view. Your point about doing heroin and logging into VR, right? Yeah, you are maximizing the pleasure in some way. You're probably not reproducing and going to destroy whatever community those people are coming from, because there's no children anymore and you've terminated some genetic line.
And then there's also this notion of maybe you can do more good rather than volunteering at the soup kitchen if you go to Wall Street, become a trader, and spend all your money on bed nets, right? And this is the perfect example of FTX, right? He was making a lot of money and he was going to donate billions of it, million. But the thing is, like, when you're making that money, most times when you're making that amount of money, you're not doing good things. You're somewhere along the line, you're hurting something or someone. And so my critique of them really comes down to that they're not critical enough of the existing system. They're still operating from a perspective of, we have to have cash. We have to have this giant government. In order to be able to do good, we need this stability. And ultimately, I think we need to make alternative systems that are more resilient, more decentralized, and that diminishes their ability to have power globally and affect change globally. But the outcome probably will be better long term because we're not beholden to these centralized systems that are so easily corrupted.
These people with these expert knowledge that are like, I'm so smart, I better consolidate all the power so we can maximize the good. Yeah, I think there's biblical stuff about how that's a bad idea in some way. I could be wrong. Let me bring this conversation over, because there was one thing that you brought up, transhumanism. And so what I've heard this a lot, like I've heard this in terms of Musk, I've heard this in terms of biohacking, but I really don't understand what transhumanism is.
I think there is a kind of a muddying of the water. Lots of people have different definitions. It means different things to different people. And so a lot of it is this overlap with people who want to live in VR for thousands of years. And I think that's the ideal goal, is I want to become a toaster.
Yeah, I've heard there was a Russian billionaire who said he was going to put his mind in a computer in space or something like that.
I'm not part of that crowd, but I do think that we're going to start seeing transspeciesism happening within our
Okay.
lifetime.
And what does that mean?
Taking genes from other species and transplanting them into humans.
Okay.
And there's a lot of resistance to that to some degree. Like the immune system is pretty good at saying that's human, that's not human. But I bet there are situations where maybe 5% of the population can take dog genes or some dog genes and transplant them and do something useful that they couldn't have done before. That's really what it comes down to is you're doing something that couldn't have been done before. You're expanding what it means to be human. And that's the trans thing. You're going beyond it. The gene therapy that I've been trying out, it was taking a gene that another human's body produced in response to HIV, but my body did not generate it. So that's like the base, that's a starting point that's still within human, right? But once we start moving from taking things from other species, then it becomes murkier and it's unclear what that will mean. And clearly, some modifications could be useful for space travel to be able to survive in extreme conditions.
So this is the translateral gene something or another.
Well, yeah, it's transhumanism from gene modification. And I think that is an important concept I've been exploring is that we're so focused on patrilineal descent that's vertical in our society. It's codified into law. It's what we think about when we think about genetic mixing, but there was all sorts of lateral transfer going on.
Yeah.
Retroviruses, sharing bodily fluids. You can even exchange antibodies to some degree, and then the other person's body will pick up on how to produce that antibody to some degree. So plasmids are how bacteria exchange information in a lateral way instead of vertical. They're able to share resistance or other useful things between each other in a lateral way. And I think that in the next few decades, we're going to see lateral gene transfer becoming more and more of a thing as plasmids and other gene vectors start to take off.
Now, is that from a fully grown adult to another fully grown adult, or is that from like the cellular embryo sort of stage?
It's easier to make morphological changes when you're dealing with an embryo. If you wanted to give your kid a tail or wings or something, you would want to do it at the embryo stage.
Little chimera thing going on, yeah.
Joke to some degree, but I'm also not 100% joking either. As being the final stage of my HIV project is to have the vaccine be transmitted by semen.
Well, that's a bonus. I can see why that would be a plus.
Yeah, that'd be very effective. But then what if you can start doing other things besides just vaccination, besides immunization, start having other benefits? What if you could use semen to do this follistatin thing?
Make you very popular in certain communities.
And it would spread naturally in the right place for the HIV treatment.